Hey everyone, and welcome back. If you are new here, my name is MaggersAnn Martin, but you can just call me Maggie. I have an exciting review for you today. I'm going to call it a book talk because, you know, all you need to know is I loved it with all my heart. And that book, of course, is A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas. So if you know me at all, you know that I am a super fan of Sarah J. Maas, and I think that all of her writing is brilliant, and it's my favorite high fantasy of all the high fantasy novels out there. She just always kills it, and I think she has a great mix of romance and fantasy and powerful female characters, and it's always super engaging, and I'm in love with her writing, and this book was even better than the first. I have a review of A Court of Thorns and Roses, but I'm kind of embarrassed by it, by how much I defended Tamlin. So we'll get into that later. So in an effort to provide you with a spoiler-free section, it's hard since it's the second book. I would say read A Court of Thorns and Roses. It's about Feyre, who is a human who associates herself by accident with the fairy world that is divided in her world, and yeah, that's about all I can say that's not like super spoilery, and that's not even very relevant to this book. But if you haven't read it, please do. It is so great, and I just adore her writing. So goodbye people who have not read this. I'm going to be spoilery in a few seconds. Alright, spoilers. So first of all, to those of you who have watched my A Court of Thorns and Roses review, you will know that in there I really defended Tamlin, and going back and watching it, it was so painful. You know, Tamlin had his tendencies in that book, but so did Rhys, honestly. Like, we didn't know why he was poisoning Feyre. We didn't know why he kissed her in the hallway. We didn't know these things, and they came off as semi-abusive, but he got to kind of like talk them away later, sort of in like a Warner from the Shatter Me series fashion. So I don't know, Tamlin, he broke under the mountain when he saw Feyre die, and Feyre broke, and they just weren't a match anymore, and that's okay. It doesn't excuse how Tamlin treated her at all, but I don't think I was in the wrong to be Team Tamlin in the first book based on what we knew about Rhys then. But of course now I am completely Team Rhys. I adored him, though I loved it, but I felt like it was kind of a cop-out to like be able to explain away all of the bad things that he did. You know, it's okay to have a love interest who's a little dark and has done some bad things and still find a way to love them without like having to explain everything away. So that part was like the only part that was a little bit annoying to me, because it felt very Warner and Shatter Me. And I loved those books, but it also like irked me a little bit that like things just got explained away so easily. I don't know if I'm the only one out there who feels this way, but that's sort of how I felt. That being said, he was great. Besides everything being explained away, he really earned my love by the way that he treated Feyre and the way that he let her decide her own fate and do what she wanted to do and what she felt was right, and in a way that Tamlin never did. Tamlin kept her subdued and kept her in his power, and that's just not a healthy relationship. So this was a much, much healthier relationship. So now I'm going to find some quotes that I really enjoyed and I think build up that case that while Rhys kind of got off easy, he provided Feyre with a chance to be her own person and be who she was truly meant to be. And I feel like this comes even really early when she just goes to the Night Court for even like the first time, or after he comes and saves her from the wedding. She makes this claim on page 156, and she says, "I'm thinking that I must have been a fool in love to allow myself to be shown so little of the Spring Court. I'm thinking there's a great deal of territory I was never allowed to see or hear about, and maybe I would have lived in ignorance forever like some pet. I'm thinking that I was a lonely, helpless person, and I might have fallen in love with the first thing that showed me a hint of kindness and safety. And I'm thinking maybe he knew that. Maybe not actively, but maybe he wanted to be that person for someone. And maybe that worked for who I was before, but maybe it doesn't work for what I am now. And I just, at that moment, I was like, yes, Feyre, like, thank you for finally figuring that out, and learning to be your own person and be like the amazing person with all of this potential that they've been talking about in the books. Like, she was breaking spoons, and she just was like, oh, this is normal, this is like a fairy thing. And then Rhys was like, no, like, you're like really weirdly powerful because you have parts of all 7 of us in you, and they were just trying to play it off like it was normal because they wanted to control you. So like, that was really messed up, and I'm glad that she figured it out on her own. That was the most important part to me, that she figured it out on her own and no one else had to tell her. Another part of this I wasn't quite expecting was how steamy it was, and their chemistry was really on point. And in the first moment where I was like, oh, this is gonna get good, was at the end of chapter 19 on page 213. He like is like kneeling down in front of her, and he says like, it says his hand slid down to cup the backs of my knees, and he said, with a roguish grin, "You are my salvation, Feyre." And I was like, oh man, this is like, their chemistry was on point from the beginning. You know, I figured they must be mated more than just the bargain bond, and that ended up being true, which made me happy. And their chemistry, like, I did not expect it to be so sexual in this novel. I mean, page 23 really just like starts it off with a bang. I think my favorite scene throughout was a really tender moment between Rhys and Feyre, and that was during, like, what's it called? Starfall? Star something. And they're on the roof, and they have like the splatters of stardust on their face, and then it says like, Rhys is like, "Of course I'll dance with you all night if you wish." And then he leaned in, brushing his mouth against my heated cheek. I closed my eyes for the whisper of a kiss, a hunger that ravaged me in its wake, that might ravage Prythian. And all around us, as if the world itself were indeed falling apart, stars rained down. And I was just like, that was like the most beautiful scene, and it wasn't like overtly sexual. Like, I liked scenes like that in the book more than like their like crazy kinky sex, because it was more like tender and realistic. I don't know, but I loved like the tender scenes like this, especially when they were like falling in love. That's about it of like my favorite quotes that I'm gonna actually point out. Some things I wanted to discuss. I have some theories about her sisters. So did anyone else get the feeling that Nesta might be Cassian's mate? I definitely got that feeling, and like, since Lucien was the only one that like came out and said like, Elaine is my mate, I was like, I'm pretty sure Cassian and Nesta are also mated, but they're both like weirdly stubborn, so they're not going to admit it. So that's my theory. I think next book that's going to come up. I also think next book that Amryn is going to be reverted to her like natural state, and she'll be like the one that can destruct the King of Hybern, because she's this like ancient power, which I thought that was such a cool addition to this story. I loved all of the people that were added in, like from the Night Court, from the Court of Dreams. I also hope that Mor and Azriel get together, because like, even though she's like made this pact to never be with any of Rhys's friends, like, they obviously love each other, and like, I hope that maybe seeing like Feyre and Rhys together, like, and how they've been like split apart at the end, they'll like realize like, hey, maybe we should like take advantage of this time we have together, since like war is imminent, like the war has started. Speaking of Feyre being separated, oh my gosh, she is the spy, which is so cool. It's just been such a character development from the first book. I cannot even believe it. I was like so frustrated by her as a character in the first book, but it was only because she always second guessed herself, and then in this book she like found her voice, and I was like, thank God, because she was so different from Selena in the Throne of Glass series, because Selena like did what she wanted, took no prisoners, and then Pharaoh was like very meek, and I was just like, it doesn't feel like a Sarah J. Maas character. And then this book, I was like, okay, she's feeling more like a Sarah J. Maas character. So let me know down in the comments what your favorite parts were. And I, hands down, I'm gonna say this is my favorite book that I've read this year so far, and Court of Thorns and Roses was my favorite book of 2015. I love her writing so much. If you want to talk about it without getting like super spoilery, you can leave it down in the comments, but if you feel like you want to talk spoilers, like either message me on YouTube or Twitter, and we can talk about it. As always, thank you guys for stopping by my little book nook of the internet, and I will see you next time. Bye.